So, hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by migration and diaspora specialist at Homeland Advisory, Loksan Harley. How are you doing, Loksan?
Very well, thank you. Just saying, it's a glorious spring day here in the southeast of England. So, yeah, very happy to chat with you.
Excellent. Now, Loksan, please give us a little bit of a background on yourself and also your personal journey as well, because you're doing some really exciting things. There's the Homelands Advisory, there's the podcast, lots of exciting activities and projects you're involved in at the moment.
Yeah, so the last, I would say, almost 12 years or so, I've been an independent consultant or freelancer in the field of migration and diaspora engagement. So I've worked with a lot of government clients, UN, intergovernmental clients, some non-profits, private sector clients as well, on anything related to migration and diaspora engagement. So that could be conducting research on specific topics within that field. It could be developing policies for governments. It could be evaluating the projects of others in that space. So anything and everything to do with migration and diaspora engagement, especially the kind of more development related sides of migration. And as I'm sure we'll come to later, it has been within the international development space more than anything else, which means that it's often funded by international development aid, which is facing a bit of volatility or facing some big challenges, structural challenges right now.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's been my main practice the last 12 years. And on top of that, I also do a podcast myself, the Migration and Diaspora podcast. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I'm based in the southeast of England, but I've at various times been based in Brussels, where I know you've spent a lot of time,
Yeah.
West Africa, China, which well, I'm half Chinese, so I've spent a fair bit of time there, India, and various other countries too.
Excellent. Now, Luxon, tell us a little bit about sort of the life. I mean, you've done this for well over a decade, so you've got sort of the experience, got some of the bruises, taken some of the hits as well. So it would be just good to hear a little bit about your life as an international development freelancer. Is it something that's a smooth road, or is it a feast or a famine from time to time? Just how does it work, and how do you sort of arrange projects and a portfolio of activities?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I rarely have this opportunity to really reflect on that, I suppose, 12-year trajectory. So it's lovely to have this opportunity to do that. Um, I mean, I would say overall, it the big picture is that it's given me a life that has a lot of freedom and independence and flexibility.
Yeah.
And, at the same time, I feel I've done work that has had various forms of impact, that I've had more agency control over the impact that I've had. And I feel it's been good financially as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I would look back at those 12 years and think of the different phases of that. So earlier on, it was really about just trying to get any work and go for any project, try and make all the connections I could make, and really just prove that I could do the work, and through that get more projects.
Yeah.
And then later on, it was more about trying to zero in on some specialisms and to try and demonstrate expertise more publicly and to show to kind of get different people into my network by demonstrating my expertise. So at first it's really about throwing everything around to see what sticks, and then later on uh, really trying to develop an expertise in a specific area and draw clients in that way. So I think early on it was probably excuse me, early on it was probably a lot more volatile.
Mm.
And then later on, as I had a clearer specialism, then things became quite stable, and a lot of work just was generated from referrals. And so for quite a while, I felt pretty comfortable in always having work when I've wanted to work.
Mm.
Uh, and then more lately, now at this stage, given all the things that are happening in the international development space. Now it's a bit more of a time to re-strategize. But yeah, broadly, it's been a wild ride. It's not for everyone. You do have
Yeah.
to have that entrepreneurial energy, as you know, to try and because you're eating what's the phrase? You eating what you kill. So you've
Yes.
really got to push yourself and um, be a self-starter.
Mm.
Some people are better suited to employment, but I've always felt that that agency, that independence were really important to me. And being independent, being a freelancer allowed me to work for different clients. I always say I'm not loyal to any client, I'm loyal to causes.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that was suited me. Something I probably should have mentioned at the beginning. My wife and I also co-founded the Impact Consulting Hub, which is a
Yes.
platform for social impact and international development, freelancers, independent consultants, independent professionals. So we try to help others who want to get into this as well.
Excellent, and I think it's fantastic, and just the way you've built up your profile, and you're a go-to for so many in terms of the specific space that everyone within the sector and also beyond knows you, Loksan. I think this is a great sort of case study how you sort of build up through sort of profiling and also doing good work, doing very interesting projects, and having a clear impact in the activities that you're involved in as well. I think it's a very strong piece there.
Thanks, mate. Well, it's just like for you as well. Everyone knows future of work, gig economy stuff. It's Glenn Hodgson. So yeah,
We
right back
try
at
our
you.
best every day, Loxan. It's a journey rather than a destination, and it's always changing. And how's things for you at the moment? We got on to alluding towards that as well with the US restructuring and cuts. UK, amongst other countries, have actually talked about paring back their spending in aid development activities. How do you reassess and how do you pivot in these current times, Loksan?
I think the anxiety around it, which I feel, which many others feel in the international development space, comes more from what could happen in the future rather than what's already happened. So the US cut aid in a very disruptive way.
Hmm.
I haven't had a lot of USAID work in the past. It's probably been about maybe 10% of my portfolio overall. I was working on a USAID project and it was stopped in
Yeah.
January. It was kind of like had a meeting, just a normal meeting scheduled on a Friday with the client, and they just emailed me on the Monday saying we've just been told to stop work. So yeah,
Hmm.
we can't
Yeah.
continue until we get the authorization.
Wow.
Thankfully, very luckily for myself, and many others were not as fortunate, I had completed, 95% of the work before Christmas and been paid for that
Yeah.
95% of the work. Whereas many others in different, slightly different situations would have tendered some services but not actually been paid for them. So I very much feel for people like that. But for me, it was very much just that last few days. So I lost a few days' work, which it really isn't a big deal.
Hmm.
More
Yeah.
broadly, thinking about all the work I've done in recent years has been, EU funded or UK funded, Germany funded, Netherlands funded, and all of the donors I've mentioned have made announcements that they're cutting back on aid for various
Right.
reasons, right? Um, they're doing it in a more sensible way, so than the Americans, so they're tapering it. So we don't really know until the dust settles what that really means for for us as people who work in the space. I think myself and others in my situation would do well to be proactive about it. So I'm very much thinking, how do I pivot? I mean, both how do I diversify donors,
Yeah.
but also how do I pivot more to kind of private sector as well, and also public sector work in advanced economies. It sounds pretty crass to say, but um,
Yeah.
you know we also need to be servicing clients who will pay for things. themselves. And I hope that will be the kinds of emerging market economies that we've been working with. But
Yeah.
if I were a betting man, I'd probably be betting on more advanced economies to pay for our sorts of services. So the type of work that I've done, which has much more private sector and developed country application, is the work in the field of diaspora engagement. So how can countries engage their, not just countries, how can countries and regions engage their people abroad, living outside of where they're from, to support them in different ways, whether it's investment, whether it's export promotion, whether it's cultural diplomacy, all these sorts of things that we've seen from many countries around the world can be really effective in supporting places.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the direction we're going in right now. So looking more at, for instance, just thinking about Sweden, how can Sweden work with Swedes around the world
Yes.
to get more investment for Sweden or get support Swedish businesses abroad? So yeah, that's the kind of focus right now, but also plenty of other projects ongoing from aid, international aid funded programs that are still being funded.
Mm. No, it's essential work and equally important at these times, Loksan, we talk about sort of juggling and pivoting in a work perspective, but also juggling and pivoting from a lifestyle and a personal perspective, because you're a family man soon to become these things that we talk about, sort of parental leave, organizing your work style and your lifestyle at the same time. How do you find that in terms of the development freelancer position that you've created for yourself?
Yeah, the experience will differ from person to person in the freelance world. I can only speak to mine, and I say that because I hear lots of generalizations about freelancing and independent work.
Mm.
You've probably heard the same. Like you'd hear people say, "Oh, freelancing is very much feast versus famine," or it's very much, you're like always applying for work, you're always trying to chase work.
Yeah.
That's true for some people, and it's not true for others. Myself and a lot of the people we work closely with at the Impact Consulting Hub, we're generally we've been very much, we've had plenty of work to offered to us. So
Yeah.
it's a case of managing that. We have plenty of people who come to us and say that their main problem is that they've got too many offers, and they find it hard to say no
Yeah.
to things. So that's the kind of, it's kind of like, you can't generalize about businesses in general either, right? You get businesses that are successful, you get businesses that are struggling. So
Exactly.
freelancing is sort of the same. So
Mm.
just that little caveat. My personal experience is that it has afforded that flexibility that, especially from a lifestyle perspective, has been invaluable to me. It's allowed me and my family to move around to different parts of the world, different parts of the country. Previously, we used that to do lots of exciting travel and to be based in lots of faraway places, as far away from where we're from anyway,
Yeah.
um, and to like live somewhat nomadically. But more recently, we've used that flexibility to be close to home because,
Mm.
as you know, we started a family. We've got a 2-year-old daughter, and we've got a son on the way. So we use that flexibility to be closer to my parents, and so that we could get help. And also, I'm
Yes.
from, I think, quite a nice part of the UK, which is very family friendly. So
Beautiful.
that's kind of point one. And then just in terms of the time. So nowadays, we have our daughter in childcare for 3 days a week. One day is with my parents, and then the other day of the week is the other day of at least from Monday to Friday at least. On Fridays, my wife, who's also a freelancer, and
Yeah.
we split the childcare. So that allows us to kind of have a pace of work life, that work life balance that we think is quite important to us. And then, as you alluded to, paternity leave wise in the UK, we dads get 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Employed dads get 1 or 2 weeks, and we're not as progressive as the Swedes in that regard, unfortunately. But being freelance, having my own business allows me to be as progressive as the Swedes. So
Yep.
first time around, I took a good 6 months self-funded paternity leave, and again, very much glad that I could be self-employed to allow myself to do that. But all that is obviously contingent on us also having probably more financial buffers than an employed person would. As you
Right.
know, if you're running your own business, you do have that volatility of income, or income's quite lumpy. You could go a couple of months without an invoice, then invoice a load of money in one go. So you kind of have
Yes.
to cut back your own consumption in order to have more financial buffers, I find. And that doing that has allowed me to have that flexibility that I just described.
Oh, absolutely. And I recognize all that. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers and listeners will also recognize these kind of trends as well, Loksan. And I think it's important to have that flexibility because these are the times that don't come back. But it also means that, you have to be disciplined and organized and be able to organize things in the right way. But I also think as well at the moment we see with, people you're working with, if they know you've got a family, they'll be like, okay, should we do this now? Or maybe you're sort of picking up children from daycare. Should we take this on the evening because, get the kids to bed and then we can discuss? I think people are much more open and also realistic about the constraints, but also the obligations in life as well. So that's something that's fine line between the work-life balance, but also that flexibility goes both ways.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always find it a bit of a funny one as to whether, you know, how much we should share with people about, the challenges of
Yeah,
work-life balance, with the family.
yeah,
Because on the one hand, as a service provider, you should take it upon yourself. You should take responsibility for your own delivery, right?
yeah,
That's in some ways the essence of being freelance. And so, in that sense, you want to try and just ensure that you deliver and
mm,
then sort your own stuff out yourself.
yeah,
But yeah, absolutely. Like you do also, especially if I'm working with someone who I know has gone through that, has had kids and everything. I feel like they would probably understand what it means to, for instance, have like a sick toddler or something
for
who's
example,
been sent
yes,
home,
yeah,
who's been sent home from nursery, and where there's nothing you can do other than try to juggle,
yeah.
um, work and baby for a day.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the best way. 'Cause I find so personally as well in those kind of times, it's been very similar. People do understand. Most people have actually sort of been through it and cut you a little bit of slack. At the end of the day, it's the delivery, as you say, on the value added, as opposed to sort of the process. But one thing I'd like to pick your brains about, Loxan, is the whole idea of building an image and building a brand because you've been very successful in your space to be able to sort of create this kind of go-to position. I mean, we've talked a little bit about that previously, but would you say that sort of this profiling branding piece is almost essential for all freelancers today, both physically and in the sort of the digital setting?
I think if you want to really make it long term as a freelancer, or entrepreneur really for that matter, you do have to be somewhat public facing. We have so many people at the IC Hub who who will kind of come to us and say, "Oh, I've been applying for gigs for ages, and I'm just not getting the traction." Or, as I said, people saying that they're spending all their time applying for work,
Yeah,
and you find that they're not spending any time on, demonstrating their expertise to their audience,
yeah,
to the world. I think often that's what we talk about more at the IC Hub. Because, and I think it comes from a few things. I think there's just that natural discomfort that some people have about getting themselves out there, getting their work out there, a bit of
yeah.
insecurity, and there's no real answer that you can give. There's no one size fits all answer that I can give to people who are questioning that about themselves. I would say that for a lot of people, it seems to come from not necessarily being sure about what they want to freelance in earlier on in their freelancing journey.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they might have been a generalist project manager in a couple of different non-profits or intergovernmental organizations or wherever it is, and then they're interested in many things. They maybe have experience in a few different things, so they're kind of like, okay, well, I'll try and keep it broad. I'll try and cast the net wide, and by taking that attitude, they then find it hard to brand themselves, because
Yeah.
if you're trying to tell different people that you are, on the one hand, I don't know, like a migration expert, on the other hand, you're a health expert, I think people, potential clients, generally people in general, find it hard to accept that someone could be expert in many things.
Yeah.
So we need to put people tend to want to put other people in boxes, so that person's a migration guy, that person's an education guy. So once you decide for yourself what you want to focus on, that I think can give you confidence to then start being a bit more open about branding yourself to the world. Because for me, early on in my career, and so part of this is inevitable, especially when I was a much younger freelancer, I was just trying to figure things out. So I was going for everything.
Yeah.
I did consulting in the migration space. I did consulting in Chinese environmental regulations. I did consulting in the China Africa relations, many different things, and I was interested in all those things, of course. But things really started to happen for me as a consultant when I leaned more into the whole migration side of things,
Yeah.
migration, diaspora engagement, and then that made it much clearer to me who to proactively network with. That made it easier for me to know what kind of expertise to show off to the world. And so at the IC Hub, we talk about you want to envision a network as a kind of, you're a planet and then there's like an orbit around you. And you want to gradually bring people closer to you. So bring people into this kind of outer ring by perhaps, I don't know, adding someone on LinkedIn or by
Yeah.
meeting someone at an event. You bring them onto perhaps a mailing list. And then once you've got them in your orbit, then you can start demonstrating your expertise and experience to them, creating content, doing podcasts, doing blogs, doing LinkedIn posts. And then as these people get to know you better and know what you're about, then a small percentage, but enough of a percentage will end up becoming clients, hopefully. So that's the kind of strategy that we focus on.
Excellent. When you've been very successful at it as well. And I think that, it's also this growing trend we seem to see in terms of people wanting to have their own businesses, be freelancers, have portfolio careers. Uh, Not everyone, as you said at the top of the discussion there, Loksan, it's not for everyone. And some people prefer the 9 to 5, knowing that on the 25th of every month they will get a salary in their bank account and that's it. But why would you say that this kind of idea of flexibility and creating your own portfolio of clients and projects, why is that becoming more and more popular amongst individuals these days, would you say?
It's difficult to say, really. I mean, I think part of it is just the way that the labor market has changed, there's how the economy has changed. Organizations want to become more nimble.
Hmm.
There's, I think, just also been a shift in culture. So employment isn't as stable as it was. Just thinking about, the UK, America, and some other comparable countries.
Definitely.
So part of it, I think, is people having less choice of getting a stable career. Or, if you think about the international development space, I was at one of my clients' offices in Nairobi a few weeks back, and they told me that the staff were telling me that everyone in the office were on annual contracts, annual
Yeah.
fixed term contracts. So there's I was kind of think I mean, I joke half jokingly but pretty seriously said, okay, well, so you don't really have any more stability than a consultant, really, than a freelancer. I at least feel that I have a good choice of different contracts to work on, whereas they're kind of every towards the end of every year, proverbially, dropping a brick.
Yeah.
So I think the world of work, the world of employment has become less stable. But then, yeah, I think people um, also like to do, I think people by nature like to do different things. People by nature are more tied to causes than, brand names and organizations, I feel.
Mm. Oh,
And you just have
absolutely.
these phenomenal advantages if you can make it work, if you can make a portfolio career work. So I don't know. And yeah, it'll be curious to see generationally how this plays out as well. I think Gen Z are probably starting to get to the age where they could make freelancing work better. They've had a bit of experience now in the workplace, so they're probably at the stage where they're starting, freelancing is becoming more of an option for them, and they're kind of the stereotype of the Gen Zers is that they're more about work-life balance than previous generations.
Yeah.
And millennials are coming of age in terms of starting families and having families, so there's those reasons for them to go freelance. And I think millennials versus previous generations have been a bit more mobile and focused on self-actualization than previous generations as well. So I don't know, thinking out loud, but many different dynamics are playing out, I think.
Excellent. Well, it's fantastic to hear and also for you to share your journey, but also for us to keep an eye out for the fantastic things that you're doing in the diaspora space, and also throughout the paternity leave that you'll be taking as well. So great to be able to sort of get the balance there, but also to have you back on and hear about how these things are working out as well, Loksan, because it's always a journey and an interesting one amongst along the tracks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, no, it's a pleasure speaking, and always happy to try and be an open book and see if anyone, see if anything I say resonates with others. Hope it does.
Exactly. I'm sure it does. Loksan, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, all the best. Take care.